Bang. All right. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris. It's Monday, September 18th. There's been some confusion because what are the odds is 2 p.m. and it's once a month. It will actually start to be more than once a month as we get much closer to the primaries and caucus season. So we just moved Inside the Numbers to 2 p.m. on Mondays to make it easier or simpler for everybody to remember. All right. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but that's the way it is. All right, so because this will be replaced, and maybe we'll put another Inside the Numbers some other time during the week, which we've done in the past. That's probably what we'll do, but for now, it is what it is. All right, today we're going to talk about Paxton acquitted in by the Texas Senate. The Bush family completely humiliated. They are furious, and you guys did it. The voters did it. That was a vote that we were keeping up with, doing everything we could to make calls and see what was going on. And for a moment there, I got to tell you, even though Attorney General Paxton at some point has to just say, it's hands off. It's in God's hands now. There's nothing I can do about it. See what the voters do. The voters never let up. Hancock is going to he's going to pay. The voters were pissed. But at the end of the day, Attorney General Paxton got votes that, to be honest, vote counters like me were not sure he was going to get. So big win for Ken Paxton, big win for MAGA, big win for the voters, big major humiliation for the Bush family, who did everything in their power to try to remove what is the most effective Republican Attorney General in the country, all as part of this effort to purge the party, especially in states where they think they run, they think they're dominant, of America first. And listen, this has got to go. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. John O'Shea is going to come by. Good friends with Ken Paxton running in Texas 12 against Kay Granger, who is definitely Team Bush. We have to talk about how these efforts are part of they're proxy fights in a larger fight, which carries all the way to the nomination, all the way to the uniparty, and will definitely it will not end with the primary. It will continue into the general election, which gets us to the other point, DeSantis' campaign woes, which we're just going to wrap up with the very first segment we're going to do here, which is we're going to wrap it into, which is Trump is moving to end opposition here, cut him off at the pass. We'll get into why that is historically. I'm going to read an article. Some things I will agree with, some things I will not. I will not agree with. We're going to read two actually, one for context and then one that is, getting to more to the crux of the argument, and then also we'll have time to talk a little bit about polling trends. The trends continue. Going back to what we were talking about all last week, this idea, which is being pushed by pollsters who are paid by DeSantis and his super PAC, that Trump is hemorrhaging white voters and the non-white vote, the increase in support for Trump among non-white voters is a mirage. It's not real. More polling data to back up what I argued last week, which is that is total bunk. And again, remember this before we go into the first segment here. The only way you can make that argument, and yes, pollsters know better, which so many people said to me, don't pollsters know this? Don't they know better? Of course they do. The only way you can make that argument is by making apples to oranges comparisons. Apples being the current polls now, oranges being the final results of the 2022 election. Apples to apples would be that particular poll right now. And then, of course, we're going to look at all of them in the universe of polling compared to where that poll was in 2020. Why? Because Trump outperforms his white vote his white vote margin that he appears to have in the polling. It is bigger than it has been in the polling, both in 16 and in 20. And then, secondly, they have to ignore what every pollster knows, which is sampling errors for subgroups are higher. So, in the case of the Emerson poll, for instance, they trash. The final Emerson poll in 2020 was Biden +5. Biden won the popular vote by roughly 4 points. They overstated Trump's share with black voters. They had him around 20%. He did not get that. If you believe Edison Research, you got about 12%. If you believe the Co-op Project, you got about 8%. But it still didn't make Emerson wrong because Emerson understated his share of the white vote. And at the end of the day, it all ironed out because sampling errors for subgroups are higher. And sampling errors for the subgroup of non-whites are higher than for the subgroup of whites because non-whites are a smaller sample. Of course they know this. Of course they do. They like to lie. Trump says, we like to troll. We do a little trolling. Well, they like to lie. They do a little lying. All right, Ken Griffin. You may remember him. He did, after Donald Trump secured the 2016 nomination and went on to win the presidency, Ken Griffin then started to give Donald Trump money. But he hated Donald Trump. Why did donors do that? Because they hate more than they hate when their candidates they're not supporting lose. They hate not having a seat at the table. They throw around money in the hopes that they can buy influence with it. So he came over and started giving some money to Donald Trump when Donald Trump imposed his restrictions on travel from countries that have no vetting and are, they called it the Muslim ban, which was ridiculous outright. And I'm not going to rehash this. But those who posed a danger to us because they did not have vetting and they were rampant with Islamic radical extremism, among other immigration policies that won Donald Trump the election when he moved to keep his promise to voters. Mr. Griffin turned on Donald Trump and said, I will never vote. I will never donate to another Republican as long as they keep the policies, the immigration policies of Donald Trump, then President Donald Trump. Fast forward, he's been giving to Ron DeSantis. He gave him a lot of money to be reelected in 2020. Ron DeSantis then used some of that money to move over to his presidential election. And now he is saying he is out. Let's add this to the stage and read it. The excuses for why Ken Griffin is out are a load of bunk. Ken Griffin is out because billionaire donors, mega donors, do not like to give money to people who are losing. It has nothing to do with the abortion ban. That is a load of crap. It has nothing to do with anything that DeSantis said or did after he decided to run for president. That is a load of crap. Ken Griffin, along with Bigelow and the Bush family and many others, convinced Ron DeSantis and his wife, convinced Ron DeSantis that he could beat Donald Trump. And now that he is losing, he is being abandoned by these people. This is why you do not take the word of big donors, think they're your friends. They are not. The same thing goes with Peter Fye. I mean, the friggin' villain from Batman, whatever you want to call him. You couldn't make this stuff up. They will abandon you in a heartbeat. They knew all about Ron DeSantis's inner discussions about whether or not to support a 6-week abortion ban. He knew all about the Disney stuff. So stop pretending Disney had something to do with it. Ron DeSantis has lost a low of half of his support to a high of 1/3 of his support since he announced running for president, depending on which poll you were looking at. And where they are now. He was high in the 30s in some. He's ballpark 8-10% now. Some he was around 20. He's ballpark 10-12 now. So it depends. But 50 to 66% of his support has evaporated, and he is going to lose. This is why Ken Griffin has bailed. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. That is why Peter Fye bailed. This is what these people do. They're not your friends. They're not the friends to the voter. They're not the friends to the candidates that they convince to do the dumbest thing in the world and commit career suicide. They're going to survive. It's the candidate who's not. But you know what? You're a grown man. And really, at the end of the day, there's only one person that you could blame for your mistakes. All right. It's going to air tonight around 8 o'clock. All right, billionaire Ken Griffin, former DeSantis donor, on sidelines for GOP presidential primary. Billionaire and Citadel CEO Ken Griffin said he is sitting on the sidelines for the 2024 Republican presidential primary. He was not. He is now. And there's a reason why I'm going in this order. Just bear with me, okay? Griffin explained that so far he's not impressed with what he's seeing from the alternatives to the frontrunner and former President Donald Trump, and has yet to decide who he plans to help. That's bullcrap. Some of his money has already been moved over. As for Ron DeSantis, Griffin doesn't understand the strategy of the Florida governor's presidential campaign and takes issue with the battle being waged with Disney. That is a lie. This is the same thing him and Peter Fye have been floating for months since DeSantis has started to crater. Peter Fye chose to make it all about the 6-week abortion ban. They knew all about it. Their hatred for Donald Trump led them to turn a blind eye because DeSantis at the time appeared to be their best bet at unseating the king, dethroning the king. And he is, whether you like that or not, whether you want to hear that or not. That's just tough. When my phone interviews are showing the guy's almost at 70% in Florida, he's the man. But now that he's losing, nobody wants to back a loser. Billionaire and Citadel CEO Ken Griffin, a major Republican donor, says he's sitting on the sidelines of the GOP presidential primary and not supporting Governor Ron DeSantis, who he backed in 2022. Griffin is not impressed with what he's seen to the alternatives. We all know this. Anyway, has yet to decide who he plans to help. He said in an interview with CNBC's Sarah Eason, set to air Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Quote, I'm still on the sidelines as to who to support in this election cycle, Griffin said. Look, if I had my dream, we'd have a great Republican candidate in the primary who was younger, of a different generation, with a different tone for America. And we'd have a younger person on the Democratic side in the primary who would have his message for our country. With two younger, fresher candidates, quote, we have a debate around ideas and principles and policies to make this a great nation, he said. We're not having that dialogue right now. No, we are. You just don't like the side that's winning. There has been in the last week or so this attempt to make MAGA and America first like this emotional populism that isn't rooted in policy. It is rooted in policy. It's just rooted in the policy that Ken Griffin doesn't want, doesn't like, puts his fortune in, well, not even in jeopardy, but he can't continue to destroy the middle class to benefit his own personal finances. Why? Because it would be fair trade, not free trade. Right? Workers' wages wouldn't be depressed by illegal immigration that he supports because he likes low wages for his. I'm not even going to say that, but he likes low wages and he likes people folding his laundry for cheap and he likes people mowing his lawn for cheap and he likes people washing his butt for cheap, building his bidet for cheap. Griffin has estimated net worth of $35 billion and gave over $100 billion during the 2022 midterms to a mix of state and federal candidates, with almost all of it going toward Republicans. Griffin gave $5 million in 2021 to a political action committee backing DeSantis' successful re-election bid, according to state campaign finance records, which were then scooted over into DeSantis' presidential campaign. His sidelining in the GOP primary means, at least for now, one of the party's biggest contributors will not be putting his considerable financial resources toward a candidate challenging Trump's enormous advantage. The former president leads the primary field by at least 50 points, according to the latest Quinnipiac poll. Each day that passes with donors like Griffin staying out of the Republican primary is the day the money race accrues to Trump's benefit. Quote, as the presidential campaign unfolds, I am assessing how the policies of each candidate will adjust to challenges facing our nation, Griffin said later in a statement to CNBC. Translation, I am addressing which policies will make me richer. I care deeply about individual rights and freedoms. Really? Where were you during Crossfire Hurricane? Where have you been when the FBI has been rounding up average American citizens, grandmas and grandpas who are being thrown in jail for doing something Democrats have done many, many times in the past? Given themselves alternative electors. Anyway, strong national defense, of course. Sorry about that. My phone went off. As for DeSantis, Griffin doesn't understand the strategy. We all know this. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to continue going on and on and on. But last week, before we get into this, last week there was actually over a week. There was this effort by people who claim to know people in the Trump world that now support Ron DeSantis. They don't know anybody close to Donald Trump anymore. Trump's circle doesn't work that way. If you betray Donald Trump, the circle closes. Claiming that Trump was ceding, forfeiting, giving up on Iowa. Sources close to me, Bob Vanderplaats, Jenna Ellis, whatever her name is. I've heard, from my sources in Trump's world that don't exist, that the president is just giving up on Iowa. This came days after the DeSantis campaign admitted to Politico that they would be happy placing second in Iowa, which of course is total bunk. He is all in on Iowa, which is why we're having this abortion meltdown on Twitter right now. Let me just back, before we even move forward with this article, he is all in on Iowa. Cortez told him, oops, here we go. My open lips, I just can't stop. Cortez told him it was stupid to support a 6-week abortion ban. He lost. He was vetoed. They needed something to outflank Donald Trump in Iowa and try to paint Trump as some kind of liberal Manhattanite again. Like we're back to 2016 again. These people just recycle old ideas that don't work because they're good at losing. They don't know what to do. $90 million in the first quarter, folks, spent to defeat Donald Trump. Look at the trajectory of the polls. Look at where we are now. $90 million. Why does that make me angry? Because of the last segment we're going to go over later today when we talk about polling trends. Scott Pressler blowing the whistle. What the RNC is doing and other people aren't doing is not enough. And yet you'll have all these people claim that they're poor, cry being poor, like David says all the time. David Giglio, he's totally right. They're going to spend their money to try to do what? Defeat a guy who is expanding his lead every day and a guy who leads among unlikely voters 2.5, 3-1, and among non-registered eligible adults by 20 points. These are truly dumb people. $90 million already gone. Up in smoke. And that's just on those. I'm not talking about the vendors and how much they made. People like Jeff Rowe be $30, $40 million richer for destroying probably, if not one of the most promising careers, political figures on the right. Now, as it turns out, maybe he did MAGA a favor because he doesn't appear to be very MAGA, does he? And the people who he surrounds himself with don't appear to be very MAGA. Anyway, this Griffin News, I'm going to keep going on. They are all in on Iowa. This Griffin News is bad because the Paxton impeachment failed. And this trip that's being reported on to Texas with Chip Roy and others who, by the way, did everything in their power to help Ken Paxton be removed from office. This was supposed to be like a round of celebration with the Bushies. This was supposed to be a fundraising celebratory tour to celebrate the defeat of MAGA in a battle that is one battle in a greater war. And they lost. And now they're losing donors, which gives the Trump campaign an enormous opportunity. An enormous opportunity. And they see it. So a little over a week ago, we had all of these fake news reports. Then the Gazette, he's seeding Iowa. Then the Gazette comes out maybe 24 hours later after that bumbling idiot made that statement on that show. Maybe 24 hours later, the president's schedule comes out. And it shows redoubling's not even it. Let's just get with the article and then you can see it. Trump moves to put the nail in DeSantis' campaign coffin. And in truth, folks, DeSantis does have the second strongest base of support in Iowa, but we're talking about 4%. We have to make this very clear. If you're talking about people who are committed and people who are not able to change them, they're not willing or to change their mind or be persuaded, you're talking about 4%. That's it. But who else would take up the banner if he goes down here? Tim Scott, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley. They're going to win the Iowa caucuses? No, they're not. Trump moves to put the nail in DeSantis' campaign coffin. The ex-president is upping his presence in Iowa in an attempt to close any door on the comeback by the Florida governor. Donald Trump's campaign believes Ron DeSantis is flatlining. Well, is that an objective or subjective statement? It's an objective statement. And actually, flatline may even be a modest statement. In truth, I remember Bannon asked me 2 months ago, can he go into single digits? And what did I say? Now they want to bury him. The former president and his team are beefing up their efforts in Iowa, hoping to deliver the type of knockout punch that would effectively end the Florida governor's bid and send a message to the other campaigns to get out of the way. It's worth noting here that there is no second place for anybody but Trump in Iowa. Nobody can continue if they don't get the momentum from Iowa other than Donald Trump. Jeff Rowe, he didn't even care that it was being taped, recorded, and it would be reported on. He knew it would be. Told donors, look, I need 50 mil stat. I need 5 mil a week or some ridiculous amount. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it to Iowa. We have 60 days to beat Donald Trump. That was almost a month ago. The first 30 are fast approaching. The former president and his team are beefing up their efforts, hoping to deliver that knockout. Get out of the way is the message to the rest of them. Building on his 7 visits to Iowa so far this year, Trump is embarking on a Team Trump caucus commitment, organizing events in Iowa with campaign volunteers at the Jackson County Fairgrounds and remarks at the Grand River Conference Center in Dubuque this Wednesday. And by the way, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm looking at where he's performing. And after this article, I should pop it up real quick just to show you because, I mean, it's smart. If you see where he's going and you see where his support is versus other people's support, he's trying to deliver the knockout blow. That is exactly what he's doing. He's just going to head it off. There's not going to be anywhere to get votes from after he's done. Trump plans to make 3 more stops in Iowa during the first half of October and again in the final days of the month, his team said. The Trump campaign is also bringing on Alex Meyer, who was recently part of the RNC's Politico data team, as a senior advisor to focus on both Iowa and Missouri. It's a remarkable investment of time from a candidate who has, through the summer, left a light footprint on the trail. And it's been supplemented with an air attack by Trump World as pro-DeSantis PAC advertises aggressively in the state. MAGA Inc., the super PAC supporting Trump, is spending over $700,000 on advertising this week in Iowa, according to the ad tracking firm Ad Impact. Ad Impact is actually really cool, guys, if you haven't checked it out. Trump's Iowa team is focused on educating and training Trump supporters on the caucus process. And the Trump campaign has boasted of 27,500 signed caucus pledge cards and 1,500 local volunteers in the state. That is more than twice the amount of pledges that DeSantis has. Let me make this as crystal clear for you. That is more than twice the number of pledges that DeSantis has, despite spending all that money, despite hiring so-called the best ground game in the, and putting in all of the effort that you supposedly need to put in to win the Iowa caucus. That's regardless of having local Steve Deese's support. By the way, we remember Steve Deese from 2016. You guys don't remember him? We're going to show you a little clip in a second. It's not even an attack. It's just me telling you or showing you that I think it's time to remember that these people were chameleons for a long time. They never were pro-Trump. They never were. They were chameleons who, after Trump won the presidency, he won without them. After Trump won the presidency, they decided then and only then to pretend to be supporters of Donald Trump. They were not supporters of Trump, never were. Despite Steve Deese, despite Bob Vanderplatz, despite all the religious leaders. And by the way, I've looked, and Trump does have a precinct captain in every single county. I mean, he does have some ground game. It's just not a traditional Iowa ground game. But, I mean, folks, honestly, in all honesty, he's got something nobody else has. No candidate has ever won Iowa by more than 12 points, and even the most conservative polls have us at double that margin, said Alex Latham, the Trump campaign's early state director. But I try to continuously remind our team and our staff and everybody that we do not take it for granted. Well, you always run like you're 10 points behind. It doesn't matter if you're 10 points up, you're 20 points up, you're 30 points up like you are in Iowa right now. You run like you are behind all the time. But what he said is really important. Iowa is not won by the margin that Trump is currently winning it by. So to pretend like something's going to radically change this is a little bit for an incumbent insurgent hybrid president or candidate who is beloved by the party, as Steve Kornacki pointed out. Even people who aren't supporting him still have a greater favorability measure with Trump than they do with any of the other Republican candidates. Ted Cruz never led with evangelicals by the margin that Trump is leading with them now. Trump leads with evangelicals by the same amount he leads with non-evangelicals. The polls that had Trump up a little bit in 2016, which Ted Cruz eked out with his little scam, you know what they did. I'm not going to get into it with Ben Carson all over again. But they projected that evangelicals would only be about 42% of the electorate. They ended up being almost 75%. And that was enough, along with the scam, to eke out a few point win. Nobody leads in Iowa like this, folks. Trump's flurry of activity in the state comes as his rivals have been crisscrossing Iowa in hopes they can somehow finally change the trajectory of the race, which seems less and less competitive each day. This is the least competitive Republican nomination contest in modern memory. This is not competitive at all. Not anywhere. Not in the Rust Belt, where Trump is at almost 70% in states like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Not in the South, where he is above that in some states. Not in the West, where he's triggering California's winner-take-all threshold rule. Not out West, not in Arizona, where he's got a 40-plus point lead because Team DeSantis thought, and his online idiots thought it would be a smart idea to go after Kari Lake, who is the second most popular Republican figure statewide other than Donald Trump. So that leaves Iowa. That's it for them. At this point, he may not even get there. Understand this. There's a very good possibility that he simply doesn't have the resources to continue to Iowa. Trump is, at this juncture, the runaway frontrunner nationally. And in Iowa, he is beating DeSantis in state polls by about 30 points. But veterans of the state's caucuses say such a lead may be overblown and that Trump is wise to try and put his foot on the pedal right now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with absolutely digging in the blade and turning right now. But to pretend like Trump is like some other example of Iowa, like Bush and McCain or something like that, or Romney and Santorum, is just ridiculous. If you look historically, when the race starts coming together and trajectory and momentum and those kinds of things really start to matter, it is after Labor Day, after school has started. That's when you saw previous insurgent campaigns really starting to get traction, like Huckabee, Santorum, etc. Said veteran Iowa Republican operative Nicole Schlinger. That is true. But again, we're in a different kind of cycle. If you think Donald Trump is comparable to other candidates, you're obviously not paying attention and have not been paying attention for the last 7 years. He is not. It would take something extraordinary to make the normal rules apply to him. But she is right. However, I'm going to go back to Kornacki's assessment, which we have told you weeks ago when we polled Iowa last time. His voters are not changing their minds. Nobody else, whether it was Huckabee, Santorum, Romney, Bush, McCain, nobody had voters who said, no, I'm not persuadable. He is all alone in that aspect. So it's very difficult to point to anything else historical. Not to mention, why are we pretending as if the more people see Ron DeSantis, the less they like him? Why are we pretending that's not the case? What exactly, with debates, events, what exactly is going to change? Because Ed Rollins is right. You can blame Jeff Rowe all you want. You can blame Janera Peck all you want, although that is an unfair attack by Jeff Rowe on her. Sure, she doesn't have presidential campaign experience like you do. Losing them? You have a lot of experience getting your ass kicked. I'd rather get new blood who has new ideas than get somebody from Ted Cruz in the Walker field who just continuously get crushed. In any event, I just don't see, because things with the candidate changing. And as I told you from the very beginning, he's not a good candidate. He's an awkward dude. A gubernatorial election is not predictive of presidential elections. By the way, on Sunday, yesterday, we started to read Kevin Phillips, The Emerging Republican Majority, and I had to take a second. In the beginning opening chapter, there's two prefaces we read, and then in chapter 1, to hammer over and over again his point that there's a reason he does not include gubernatorial and congressional vote histories in his analysis because they have no predictive value at the presidential level. Even when he originally wrote that book, he left out the Senate because the era of non-ticket splitting was not upon us at that point. People still split tickets in the Senate. Partisan voting indexes have gotten more rigid under Barack Obama, and they went from 100% no ticket splitting under Trump that started to dissipate some. They voted for Republican presidential candidates, but Democrats. Alabama was a great example of that. And I can go on, but gubernatorial elections have no predictive value. DeSantis, for his part, is betting much of his political fortune on Iowa. He has been outworking Trump in the Hawkeye state, which comes with just 40 delegates, but the potential for immeasurable momentum. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Immeasurable momentum when it kicks off a grueling primary season on January 15th, 2024. He received 40 endorsements from state legislators, visited 58 of the state's 99 counties, and campaigned alongside the popular governor, Kim Reynolds, who Trump has publicly admonished. Let's just stop right there. DeSantis' team says it has secured some 13,000 written commitments from caucus goers. That's less than half of what Donald Trump has. Number one. Number two, let's back up to the state legislatures. This is another thing that really, this is why you watch the show, to understand what people like me know. And you hear nonsense from the pundits on TV, dummies who think they're experts on social media. They're like influencers, whatever you want to call them. They have no experience or education or anything or track record. They just don't know what the hell they're talking about. So when they see something like, he's got 40 endorsements from state legislators, they think that's like important or something. As much as I hate 538 for smearing me as much as they did because I embarrassed their guru, the fact of the matter is there's a reason they score endorsements points in the point system they do. State legislators mean almost nothing. I'm sorry. This is research built off the party decides thesis. Many, 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 many people have revisited it time and time again, over and over. Gubernatorial endorsements matter. Senatorial endorsements matter. The House of Representatives matters. Vice presidencies matter. Former presidents matter. They do not matter. They have a very, very minimal impact on the electorate. And by that measure, Trump is absolutely crushing him. Kim Reynolds, the popular governor, really? Because Kim Reynolds was popular and above water before all of this. Now the poll just came out a week and a half ago. She is underwater. She has swung net negative 20 almost since this. And the PAC that is all but running the Florida governor's campaign, no, they are running it. Politico's being careful here because they don't want to say what everyone knows to be true because we're in uncharted territory. Running the campaign. Yes, that is supposed to be illegal. They are using little things to get around it, but that is what they are trying to do. For instance, a PAC can only hold so many events with one candidate they support being the main event. They're using little loopholes and stuff to get out of that. But they are paying for it all because his campaign is broke. That is why they fired everyone. Their running Florida governor campaign has bought $15.6 million worth of ads in the state through November, according to Ad Impact. More than triple the $2.9 the MAGA Impact supporting Trump has spent. DeSantis will participate in 6 different events in Iowa on Saturday. That means he is doing more events in one day than Trump has planned in the Hawkeye state in the next 7 weeks. Sorry. DeSantis spokesperson Andrew Romero said in a recent email blast, "No wonder why Trump's allies are growing concerned that his lead in Iowa is first in the nation. Caucus isn't built to last. Ron DeSantis is putting in the work to win the Hawkeye state while Donald Trump continues to flip Iowans the bird." That's childish, number one. And Iowans, you're acting this holier than thou thing, and then you act like that. And this is the hypocrisy thing that Republicans run into all the time, and it's why the middle of the country hates their guts. They're judgmental hypocrites, and they're really no better than little children and no better than the Democrat. They're just hypocrites about it. But the reason why I read that text in blue the way I did is because it's a joke. They planted that story. It's not true. They planted a story which got debunked quickly, and yet they're just still rattling off the talking points as if it was a successful planted story. It's really delusional. And this is something that's become a factor of this man's campaign. Delusion is a real issue with the DeSantis campaign. Despite acknowledging they would be satisfied with a strong second place in Iowa. Time out. I have a hard time trying to live in, like, even visit the realms that these people walk in. It's like going into the further. You ever see that in Insidious or whatever the hell the name of that trilogy is? It's like going into the further, folks. And if you stay there too long, you will get lost there with the rest of the idiots yourself. DeSantis' team is signaling confidence in the state, despite he had teamed up repeatedly with Reynolds and appears to be a lead contender to receive the endorsement of high-profile evangelical Bob Vander Plaats of the family leader. Listen, he already has Vander Plaats' support. Let's stop it. The same way we already knew for 3 months he had Steve Deese's support. Bob Vander Plaats is pretending like he didn't endorse him yet so he can try to do it in a way where they can maximize the impact. They're waiting on purpose to drop the endorsement because they want to maximize the impact. They want to pretend that he's not supporting him now and try to get some buzz and momentum off of that endorsement because of his reputation as a kingmaker. But the truth of the matter is, Robert Barnes is right. Bob Vander Plaats doesn't have a crystal ball. He's not some, or I should say, actually, he's not some, like, massive figure that, gets behind someone and then pushes them over the finish line. He's been able in the past to uniquely read, the elect. He just picks the winning horse most of the time because he knows that Iowa is more conservative than the rest of the nation when it comes to the caucus. It's a caucus. Number one, if it was a primary, it would not be that conservative. He nearly ended his run in 2016 when Trump almost beat Cruz. They needed to pull out all the stops, and his endorsement is not going to swing the polls 30 points. The flock is not listening to the shepherd anymore. Why? Because the shepherds have discredited themselves. The shepherds have been talking about repealing Roe v. Wade for 4 decades. They called the man a liberal from New York City who would not appoint Supreme Court justices that would do that. And yet here we are. What the shepherds have done is turn once electable candidates into completely unelectable goobers so they can win the Iowa caucuses. This time, Iowans don't appear to be having it. They're wise to it now. And their number one priority is beating Joe Biden and stopping the administrative state. The second priority is the economy. Only 12% chose social issues? 19% of evangelicals? And among those voters, Trump was up by 6. DeSantis toured the state over the weekend, joining U.S. Senator Joni Ernst for an event in her hometown and attending a religious rally at Fort Des Moines Church of Christ. Conservative talk show host Steve Deese, who worked on Ted Cruz's 2016 campaign and has endorsed DeSantis, said he was still bullish on DeSantis' chances, in part because he believed Trump was still playing catch-up. Okay, he's 30 points ahead. He's playing catch-up. I understand what they're saying, like the groundwork, but it doesn't really matter if you're not persuadable. You understand what I'm saying, folks? All the door knockers are doing at that point is pissing you off. All the text messages are doing is pissing you off. All the mailers are doing is pissing you off. All the interruptions with the TV commercials are doing is pissing you off. Quote, provided he's actually willing to campaign as a populist and not a meist. Oh, now Steve Deese is going to lecture everybody on populism? Yeah, I think he can generate buzz pretty quickly, Deese said of Trump in a recent interview. The question is, when we get to a cold, bitter night on January 15th, is still enough time for him to find the activists who will show up no matter what and will bring people with them. DeSantis has a lot of those, and a lot of those aren't engaged, are probably waiting to see what Bob Vander Plaats and Kim Reynolds do. Did it look like anybody in the stadium cared that Ron DeSantis was sitting with Governor Kim Reynolds? Or did they look like they were all hanging out with Donald Trump? The one person giving the finger was a faked photo. At least that's what the evidence says. I mean, come on, folks. This is ridiculous. This is just crazy. And we're going to stop for a second, and I'm going to play you something. Okay? Flashback.
Syndicated host on Salem Radio Network who supported Ted Cruz for president and has also said he will never vote for Donald Trump. Steve, good to have you with us today.
Also said he will never vote for Donald Trump.
Thank you.
You said you would never vote for Donald Trump. At this point, your choices look like Donald Trump and either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. So do you end up voting for a Democrat? Do you not vote? How do you move forward in November?
You know, Eric, I don't know. I just got out of a really bad relationship with the Republican Party yesterday. It's been dysfunctional for years. So I'm kind of that breakup chick in a Gretchen Wilson country music video. I just want to tour the country for a while, play the field, relax, and just find myself again.
Tell me, did it take 48 hours after he booked that interview with MSNBC to come up with that corny ass intro that he knew was going to be softball to him? He doesn't know? This is what Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich are talking about. The people who did everything in their power to elect Hillary Clinton, which, by the way, would have resulted not only in Roe v. Wade not being overturned, but being fortified. 3 more Supreme Court justices, liberal, are now lecturing you about conservatism and principles, telling you the founding fathers are burning in hell right now, judging you.
I mean, I've been listening to these reports, and I've been laughing off the air because it's all the reasons why I am never Trump. I feel no compulsion whatsoever, no moral imperative whatsoever to help Lex Luthor finish off his memoirs. He can do that on his own time. If we're not going to advance any ideology, anything that I think is worth conserving, then frankly, it's not worth me making enemies of nice people like you and other people here at MSNBC.
Whoa! Enemies. It's not worth making enemies of nice people like you and others at MSNBC. I'm not saying anything because I want you to marinate on that for a second. Such nice people. They pushed a madman to believe a hoax that was really a seditious conspiracy to overturn the 2016 election and worse, undercut the administration of a duly elected president. They pushed a nut job so far he shot Steve Scalise and 4 others because he thought they were his Russian enablers. The nice people at MSNBC who did not want Roe v. Wade overturned, who wanted 500,000 babies murdered every year. I thought he was pro-life. The nice people at MSNBC, folks. It's not worth making enemies of them for Donald Trump. That's modern conservatism for you, apparently. No, it's not. It doesn't reflect that in the numbers in the polling. People don't agree with him. He doesn't realize that, take for instance, the CBS News poll that just for the first time ever out of all the alphabets networks have Trump hitting 50 in the popular vote. Never happened. In case you missed that yesterday, it's a pretty important data point to marinate on. He doesn't realize that the less than 2% of supposed Trump voters who would vote for Joe Biden, that's him. That's where he is now. Less than 2%. That's who he represents. If you believe even the song and dance you saw for the last 6 years, which I am here to tell you I do not. I do not believe Donald Trump is losing Steve Deese's vote and Bob Vander Plaats's vote. I do not believe he's losing the vote of so many of these other people. He never had them. Donald Trump traded them for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Obama voters. He traded them. Goodbye. Sayonara 2%. I'll take the 8% who switched from 2020. Which is what the CBS News poll shows.
And other liberals, there's no point to it. We might as well just be friends. I have no interest in taking sides in the self-actualization quest between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They can do that on their own.
So neither one of them works for you. You wrote in your column that Tuesday was the day the Republican Party died, characterizing it as a sad day for America, but also deserved.
So
why would you
morally
say
superior.
it's deserved?
Laura, don't interrupt. We're having a moral.
Well, we as a
superior
people,
lesson.
sadly,
Moral
have decided that
superiority
we want to, many of us anyway, not all of us, but I think it's clear a majority of Americans want to walk away from the things that made us exceptional as a people in the first place. And
wait a minute. I thought the people who framed the government that made us exceptional are burning in hell right now, because that's what he said yesterday. Our founding fathers are burning in hell. So which is it? Do you understand what I'm saying, folks? This doesn't make any sense. So aside from the fact he represents less than 2%, if you take his word at face value, which I do not, what he is saying makes no logical sense. What does he hope to conserve if the people who started this country are sinners who are burning in hell? What are we conserving? You understand what I'm telling you, people? This doesn't make any sense. More.
that's why I'm a conservative. It's not about pitting groups of people together. And I've watched Trump do this. And the thing that has bothered me the most, Erica, about this primary is I've watched Donald Trump successfully capitalize.
Now, I'm giving him as much respect as he gives the American voter. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm not being mean. I'm not no, I am ridiculing him. I am giving him as much respect as he gives the American voter. I am sick and tired of these professional losers treating the voters like shit. I'm tired of it. Your job is to listen to them. That's your job. You don't like it? Go vote for Joe Biden. He's going to carry your state anyway. It doesn't matter. Here's the kicker. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need you. You need him. You needed a home, which is why you played chameleon for 6 years. And if you had your way, Roe v. Wade would still be the law of the land right now. You are the nobody. You are. The voter is in charge. You just don't want to listen to them. They're going to make you listen. They're going to make you listen. Because they're not changing their minds.
On liberal stereotypes of some.
I can't imagine why the Christian right has lost so much credibility over the last 30 plus years. Gallup has done a ton of research on this, and it's kind of funny. Like, there were people on Twitter acting like we're having a debate or something. We're not having a debate. I am right. You are wrong. Christianity and the rise of the nuns is directly related to the hypocrisy of those holier-than-thou political figures who destroyed their own brand. Jimmy Swaggart, Catholic priests, George W. Bush, Mr. Christian president himself, Mr. Evangelical himself. He's so holier than thou. He's so more moral and religious than Bill Clinton, until he murders and maims 1 million innocent Iraqis in an unjust war that he did not have the authority to start. So holier than thou. They had their way. Millions of babies would still be being murdered right now. And we'd be invading every country that looked at them wrong and killing innocent people. in the name of God. You freaking frauds. It's almost like they missed the whole part of the New Testament that says judging is for God, not you. Your role is to love your neighbor, to be an example. Funny thing about those nuns, when we poll them and we ask them, Dr. Steve Turley is 100% correct. It doesn't necessarily mean they don't believe in God. They just don't believe in you or your church because you're a hypocrite. Because you put political power and your own arrogance and your own pride above everything else. Let's wrap up this before I vomit.
Vestiges of the right coalition. And the truth is, it's been proven correct. He has capitalized on code language and incendiary language. I believe that values that started the country, founded the country, are worth conserving and preserving for the next generation. That's why I get in the argument, because I think these values, and maybe I'm wrong, you might disagree with me, but I think these values are...
I disagree. I disagree that the founding fathers are burning in hell. I'm done. Get them off the screen. I disagree. The voter is sovereign, not you. Nothing you say makes any sense. None whatsoever. Cernovich is right. He's right. He's 100% correct. If it was up to these holier than thou, moral might losers, Roe v. Wade would still be there. We'd still be in Iraq. Hell, we'd probably have moved on to Syria right now. God knows what else. Work on your damn self. And the rest of them. They forsaken their values to support a Donald Trump. And somebody says, did God use Cyrus to liberate Daniel and the Jews from Babylon? No, we're supposed to. You're no, that's immoral. You know, you're drawing an immoral comparison. We're supposed to have a leader who wants to save this world. And we already had a leader who saved this world. His name was Jesus Christ. You want a false prophet, like the one outlined in the book of Revelations. That's what you want. This is why I keep this crap. This Bible thumping preaching to people from hypocrites doesn't work. Does not work. So it's tragic that they have not learned that their hypocrisy and their betrayal and their failures are why they are in this position. And refusing to acknowledge that, they just continue putting down people, continue minimizing people, and then talk about unity. It's unbelievable. And again, listen to what he was just saying there, and then he's going to lecture you on populism. So it's incredible. 6 years changes a lot, doesn't it? While DeSantis has been careful not to antagonize Trump supporters, he and his team have begun. Oh, really? Are you serious? They've been careful not to antagonize Trump supporters? Vivek Ramaswamy is the only one who has not declared war on the majority of the party. What the hell are you talking about? That is why they are where they are right now. And here, it's not just LGBT stuff, guys. I mean, trans stuff. Let's attack gay marriage. Let's attack log cabin Republicans. This goes with this is the same stuff you're seeing, all right, in other states like Kansas and elsewhere, where it frankly is absolutely disgusting what the Republican Party is doing. They're willing to sacrifice their tent in order to stop people who aren't their people from voting for Donald Trump. So what they're telling minorities and what they're telling, gay people and others is that they really don't want them. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. I'm going to put something up before the end of the hour here, before we go on break. And this is your modern Republican Party, ladies and gentlemen. It's just frankly incredible. And I'm going to refresh it, and we're going to do it all over again. Come on. I'm going to see my guest is getting ready here. You know what? Play it when we get back, because that is actually a pretty big deal for his race. In fact, God forbid Hispanics come out and vote in a primary. Oh my God. The horror of it all. We can't have that. We need only old super seniors else to come out and vote for Republicans. That's a winning recipe. Again, it's why these people are losers. Let's take a real quick break. All right, folks, listen. Weather events, extremism, whatever it may be. And by the way, all this stuff you're seeing right here, you can stack with the promo code I'm about to give you. All right. Are you prepared for it? I say you're not. I'm telling you, even if you have a natural gas or propane generator, you're still not, like Laura and I have. That's why you need a solar generator. The Patriot Power Generator 2000X is powerful enough to power your phones, medical devices for you, your family, and your loved ones, even your refrigerator, but it's solar and portable. Right now, you can get one if you go to 4patriots.com and use the promo code TPP10 at checkout. Again, that's TPP10 at checkout. This code is good for your first purchase only, so make it count. You just saw all the great deals that they have right now. They have the 2-for-1 solar generator bundle where you're still going to save $500. Take advantage of these opportunities, these sales while you can. Use the promo code from People's Pundit, TPP10, and save yourself some money on something you definitely need to prepare your family and yourselves, frankly. Again, it's 4Patriots, the number 4, patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 at checkout. All right. I'm going to play something. When I do, I'm going to bring in my buddy John O'Shea. John O'Shea is here to visit us today to talk about the Paxton acquittal. But before we do, I want to play Ken's closing arguments for the rest of the commercial break. Instead of doing other ads, I'm just going to play the closing argument from his attorney, and then we'll come back with John O'Shea.
More than 100 articles across our country smearing this man's name, smearing his wife's name, smearing a member of this body's name. And we all saw it when we put this young man under oath and showed him the documents. Guess what? Didn't happen. Wasn't true. And that is indicative of their entire case. We should not be in a position to where we have to come in here and prove our innocence, but we did. We did. The referral from the DA's office had nothing to do with banks. All of his top lieutenants had no idea there was a second referral. You know why they didn't know? Because the referral went directly to Mr. Kamek. They didn't know about the direct referral from the DA's office. And you remember Margaret Moore? She came in here and tried to pretend like she didn't know anything about it because she wasn't supervising her staff. Her staff knew all about it. Her top lieutenant knew all about it. They assumed the Kamek contract was never executed, but now we all have seen that Ken Paxton, in fact, signed that contract. They assumed that Laura Olson's job was not legitimate, but now we have seen her employment contract. We've seen her application. We've seen that she's still working for world-class properties and still doing real work. They assumed that Wicker, young man Wicker, delivered a secret package in the middle of the night in a dark alley. Never happened. But if you were to watch the news and read the newspaper, oh my goodness, that happened. Even a Texas Ranger, think about this for a minute. You have a guy 6'6", wears a hat, cloaked with the authority of the state, comes in here and says to these folks, I heard from 5 or 6 people that Drew Wicker delivered a secret package in the dark of night in an alleyway on behalf of Nate Paul. Totally false. when he was asked, who told you that? Ranger. I can't even give you one name who told me that. Totally false. I asked the young man directly, did you ever deliver anything at night? Did you ever deliver anything that had anything to do with public records? No. Never. Didn't happen. Look at the position these people had put this man in and his wife. Prove your innocence, Attorney General. You've been convicted in the press. Prove your innocence now. If it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone.
Thanks for coming back, brother. John O'Shea, ladies and gentlemen, is what I was supposed to do in that banner up. But
Hey, Rich.
I hit the mute. Listen, I'm listening to that and thinking about the last segment I'm just doing, brother. And you know what's really pissing me off? That this all has an underlying narrative. There's an underlying thing here, which is that these pieces of trash don't care about the voters at all.
No.
Ken Paxton annihilated George P. Bush and then went on to comfortably beat his Democratic opponent. And they did this despite the regulations, despite the laws statewide. There was no evidence. You have Phelan, California Dan, release a statement that says the House spent weeks laying forward the evidence, hearing the testimony. What are you talking about, you stupid drunk? There was no evidence. There was no testimony. Nobody was allowed to defend themselves. Nothing was public. What on earth are you talking about? And then when it gets public, this happens. 12 seconds. 1 second.
Total 14 yeas, 16 nays. A finding of acquittal is entered as to Article 1.
Let me get your reaction to how this went down. I know a lot of us were counting votes over the weekend. And as always, thanks for being here. John O'Shea running for Texas' 12th congressional district against Bushy K. Granger. John, thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate it. And it's good to be on here when we're actually able to celebrate Ken's acquittal. It finally, we all got to see for the last 2 weeks in a very public hearing, unlike what the House conducted in secret. And the facts became known. And not only were Ken's attorneys far superior to the House counsel, but they were also conveniently armed with the truth. And so when people got to see the truth, they, like you just said, saw there was no new evidence. There was no evidence, period. In fact, much of what had been reported in the media turned out to be information that had been laundered off a hearsay and rumor and was purposely put out there just to create this smear and this illusion that there had been something nefarious or something criminal. But at the end of the day, it turned out, you know what? Ken's worst crime was his personnel decisions, because he had a staff of traitorous vipers in there who were conspiring every which way to kind of oust him and form a coup of their own. And the Bush wing, unfortunately, spent a lot of money, and now they've been shown. I think Steve Busby said it best when he said in his closing statement that the end of the Bush era is now.
Go back to Maine. And I'm not even sure Maine wants them, the truth be told. But there is a part of Maine where, you have ruling class people and their monstrous estates. That's not Maine. You know what I mean? But that's where a lot of them retreat to. And the fact of the matter is, they were never Texas, man. You gotta be kidding, not real Texas, and I gotta say this. I have to point this out because I'd be omitting. This was supposed to be, you have this fundraising stuff going on right now. Your state's about to be bombarded. It is a Hail Mary. It is we need money. We need Texas's money in order to keep this up by the same people who tried like hell to get Paxton removed from office. Chip Roy, another one. This is what I'm talking about with these hypocrite old right. Not even old right. I don't even know what they are. They're a tiny blip on the timeline of the Republican Party and they pretend like they're the entrenched, mainstream of the Republican Party or something. They are not. And then they preach to the rest of us about conservatism. Chip Roy, disgraceful. Forget about, oh, I'm so mad at my friend. Disgraceful that he would even support this. And then fine, whatever. Maybe at first you think it's a legitimate effort, John, but then all of this comes out. Isn't it incumbent upon a real man to say, oh man, I was misled. This was wrong. Nobody should have to be put through this. Ken's, Ken, he's your friend. But I don't care who it is. If this was, Keith Ellison, I don't give a damn what attorney general it is. Right. Nobody should have to endure this. In this country, we are not accused, brother, without evidence. And then we have to prove our innocence. This is what they have turned this country into. And it's concerning. Ken had to prove his innocence instead of them prove his guilt.
No, we're no longer a nation of laws. I mean, it's just, it's shocking, but again, drawing the comparisons between Ken and the reason why he was really under attack, which was that he is Donald Trump's biggest ally and the clear leader of the America First movement here in the state of Texas.
Oh yeah.
In addition to the poor personnel decisions, but they also bear the distinction of really being two of the only elected leaders that I can think of in my adult lifetime that have gone out and done what they said they were going to do and actually represented the people. Didn't just worry about the ruling oligarch and the donor class, actually worried about and listened to the people. I know Steve Bannon likes to say all the time, not in the room, not in the deal. Well, with both of these gentlemen, we know that us, the average citizen, the working class, middle class people in this country or in this state had a voice at the table and we were being represented. And the oligarchs don't like that. They also don't like light being shined on the actual endeavors of what they're doing. And the fact that we have a media that is so complicit with this uniparty establishment is just sickening. I mean, but for shows such as yours and Bannon and Charlie Kirk and Newsmax and One America Voice, I don't know where you'd be able to turn to hear what's actually going on, because frankly, if you're just listening to Fox or CNN or MSNBC, Ukraine's getting ready to push Russia into the ocean, and where inflation's not really happening and our borders are secure, and Hunter Biden, I mean, maybe he engaged in some bad paperwork and filling out for his gun permit, but he didn't have any corrupt business dealings, and clearly his old man didn't know anything about it. I mean, how many times do these people have
16 visits?
All of a sudden, we're going to say that COVID actually emerged from a wet market. It didn't have anything to do with the Chinese Communist Party biological weapons research being done. And oh, by the way, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. These people make me sick. I mean, if I see 51 more people sign on to a letter attesting that this is Russian disinformation, or if I have to listen to Victoria Nuland preach to us one more time about defending democracy in Ukraine, I literally am going to pull my hair out.
This is the common thread, though. You just went back to it again. This really is, of course, Trump is a central figure in this, but there are all these quasi or peripheral fights that are going on. Really, though, at the core of this, what it comes down to, and I'm John, I really like to believe, like I said, that if this was Bernie Sanders or Barack Obama's movement,
sure,
I really do believe wholeheartedly that I would still have the same position. It doesn't matter, because voter sovereignty is key. I remember a lot of my friends being absolutely disgusted with me because when Barack Obama won the election in 2008, I said, that's it. Not only did he win, he won overwhelmingly. And I don't like the guy personally. I think I know who he is. I think I know what he is, but I want to give him a chance. And the voters have spoken. It's not the office. It's not the man. It's the office that you respect, because the office represents the voters' voter sovereignty. And it's very clear that they just don't believe in voter sovereignty anymore. It doesn't matter whether they are, social influencers like the Joker I just played in the last segment, or the Bush family or whatever. I mean, these are all allies in the same effort, which is to take away what makes us a self-governing society, and to dent all of the principles that you really need to uphold in order to maintain that, the rule of law, the presumption of innocence, all of that. You can't, it just doesn't even matter. You can have these show, elections all you want, because like you just said, the media is not, they're not credible. They're not, independent arbiters of the truth. They have an agenda. They are a tool or a vehicle that the administrative state can use to direct and rig, for a better lack of a word, rig a discussion, rig an election. So these things have to be preserved, John. They have to be preserved because they're the only things that are holding us from sinking into the abyss. And I hate to say it, Paxton's victory is a big victory because this was the first win that America First has had to say enough. The people of Texas flipped out. And the calls that I was getting from people, I heard a lot about, Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, huge, that if it wasn't for, you said shows like this, but they have bigger shows even than me, and I heard people are pissed at Charlie Kirk, pissed, because I don't think the average listener at home understands the level of duplicity in this, whatever you want to call it, in the Republican Party, whatever, in the it's a uniparty. It is. I don't think they understand that the same people who, maybe might support Charlie one day and help keep Turning Point going will flip the hell out at him the next day because they're really part of the Bushy attempt to take out Ken Paxton, and he wouldn't have it. So, and Bannon, those, can't tell people how important it was for, this is a good example. Would you agree? This is a good example. The left wants you to think you can't do anything. And I don't even want to say the left, the uniparty. You're right to use that term. They want you to think you can't do anything. They want you to think it's not worth your time voting or participating. Everything's rigged. Folks, the process is deeply slanted against the little guy, but it can be beaten and it can be overwhelmed. And this is a great example of that. Ken had everything lined up against him, everything. And he succeeded because you succeeded, because you supported him. And don't you think this is actually, it's not even a victory for America First, John? Any victory for America First is typically a victory for the little guy. That's just the truth, right?
Right.
But this is a victory for the people, the voter. They voted for Paxton overwhelmingly. And they were the ones who said no. And this should, if anything, show you that this system can be beat. You can bring it to heel and make them acknowledge that they need your consent to govern. I'll shut up there. But you touch on two really good points. 100% they are trying to get you to despair. They want despondency. They do. For all the people who keep going out there and touting democracy, which I have to remind for the 1000th time, we're actually a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy by design because we had the American Revolution and not the French Revolution. But for all those people screaming about a constitutional threat, and it's a threat to our democracy, they actually want to disempower, disengage the American voter. And what people have seen now is that they're fed up. They're not going to. For those people who are despondent, I say this. Look, you get the government that you deserve. And so if you're willing to roll over and not be a part of the process, then you're part of the problem. So, Ken may not be perfect. Guess what? I'm not perfect. President Trump is not perfect. Unless you see Jesus Christ of Nazareth on the ballot, it's not going to be a perfect person. But then for those of you who then default to, well, I don't want to have to choose between the lesser of two evils. Well, guess what? I've never heard anybody say, oh, give me more evil, please. I'd actually like the worst situation or the worst alternative. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think they completely are trying to gut people's spirit and their willingness to participate in this thing. The other thing I would say is this is the perfect microcosm of what's going on. And in fact, I got a funny story that kind of ties into this. So
The people here in the state of Texas, I will tell you, this has been the talking point for the last couple of weeks. In fact, our good friend Don and I were at a prayer breakfast we got invited to on Saturday morning. And we went up there, and there was this big, burly kind of lumberjack guy who came up to me afterwards and said, I heard that you're friends with Ken. And I said, no, I've been good friends with Ken for about 20 years. And the man actually teared and choked up talking about how outraged he was at what these people were doing to him and how they were trying to tear him down and destroy him. And then the next day, that night, I go to the Tarrant County GOP annual fundraising event, which, by the way, was emceed by a state representative who voted for Ken's impeachment. And while we had two excellent Congress people there, we had Roger Williams and Beth Van Dyne who were up on the stage. Guess what never once got mentioned from the podium or from the stage all evening? Ken Paxton's acquittal. Guess what everybody was talking about in the audience the entire evening? Ken Paxton's acquittal. And to think that you guys don't have a voice or that you guys don't have a say, trust me, that vote was not going to be 16-14. Okay. That vote was going to be more like
That's right.
18-12, 19-11. And it was going to be very close. But for the fact that people got involved and got engaged and they lit up their senators. And I know that for a fact because there are a couple of names that voted for Ken's acquittal on every single article who, trust me, that was not their natural inclination.
Damn right.
And, oh, by the way, for the two Republicans who did vote for Ken, they voted with the Democrats, and they know who I'm talking about. And because I don't care, I'll just call them out, Nichols and Hancock. Hancock, who unfortunately is my state senator, guess what? We're looking for primary challengers as we speak, just like we have been doing so far for the House, because we want people who are actually going to do what they say they're going to do, actually abide by conservative principles. And a principle is only a principle if you abide by it, even when it works against you, and that are not going to be part of this uniparty anymore because we're done. This is not a purple state. This is a red state. And we're going to find people who reflect those values.
Amen. I was just going to bring Hancock up. I'm glad you did that. I do want to ask you this, though, because I know, and you know, I'm a spiritual person.
Right.
And I know you're a man of faith. Does it piss you off? I don't know how much you heard of the last segment that I just had. Does it bother you as much as it bothers me to hear these? I don't even know what to call them. I hate the term fake Christians, but I don't even know what to call it, John.
Right.
I mean, they think it's their job to judge. And I heard it during the Paxton stuff. They're all the same group of people. Trump's abortion stance. It's ludicrous. Between that, Paxton, the allegations of an affair. Meanwhile, it's like half these people have affairs. And it's like, to me,
Right.
if they act like they're perfect and miss the entire point of Christianity. And it bothers me so much. And then they look down on the little person and act like they're morally superior. And it's killing the church. And I mean the church as in like the body of Christ. It's killing the body of Christ in this country, brother. It's killing the body of Christ. We are supposed to be examples. Yeah, we all falter. When none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And thank God, that we have someone to turn to and ask forgiveness for that. They act like they don't make mistakes. They act like they're perfect. The Lauren Boebert thing, okay, for instance. Where are they when they're too afraid to call out disgusting displays, hetero or homo, I don't really care, of pride, parades and, in front of children and everything. But God forbid Lauren Boebert gets her boob groped in a dark theater, and it's like we should basically put her on the pyre and burn her as a witch. I mean, this stuff drives me nuts, John. It's like they missed the entire new covenant.
No, it's but
man.
If we were to put them in biblical context, these would be the Pharisees and the Sadducees. These were the people that Jesus said, you abide by the law, but you have no love in your heart. And so, I think of, from John 1, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came from Jesus Christ. And I mean, not to just sit here and quote scripture like that somehow makes me an authority, but like you said, these people need to live in the word. I mean, in the beginning was the word and the word was with God. Well, we need to have some people actually go back and read their Bibles, because, like, to your point, he condemned judging, not because of what you do to the people that you condemn, but because of the sin that you're inflicting upon yourself. So that's why he says, why do you notice the speck in your brother's eye, not the plank in thine own? These people, they wear their religion on their sleeve, and it's for show. If they actually took a quiet moment to reflect and to spend some time in the Gospels, or spend some time reading the Old or New Testament, they would understand that they're not embodying what God wants for us, which is your point, which is the two commands that when the legal scholar challenged Jesus, and what is the greatest of the commandments? To love your God, your creator, with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and then, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, I don't see people reflecting those values very much when, like, Brother Deese gets on there and starts calling people out. And I would suggest to him, he may want to take a look in the mirror, because, as they say, you'll know the tree by the fruit that it bears. And he may want to take a look at the fruit that this tree is bearing.
Amen. And I mean, the founding fathers are burning in hell. What is wrong with these people? Even if you are talking about the institution of slavery, to make a comment that broad is gross. So, for instance, Christ came knowing the time and context he was in, and forgave all of these people who didn't really know better, yet somehow men who didn't want to tear the fabric of society apart by dealing with the institution at that moment. By the way, they did deal with it, though, when they with the Constitution. They did. I mean, they effectively outlawed the practice down the road. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to realize that. It probably would have been gone. We've had book club discussions about this. I agree with someone's argument that they made. She said, if it wasn't for the advent of the cotton gin, then it probably would have phased out a long time before it did, decades before. It just so happened, that invention in England propped up the industry even more. Right. But again, context matters. Historical context matters. So Christ is willing to forgive pagans who don't, but somehow these people are burning in hell. Not to mention, it's such a blanket statement. Jefferson quaked at the idea of supernatural retribution because of slavery. These people didn't do this with a light heart, even those who were slave owners. And Washington, once he was gone and Martha didn't need them anymore, once she was gone, made efforts to make sure that they would be freed. It's just that, unfortunately, there was a lot you had to do. It was expensive. You couldn't just let slaves go like that. I mean, people that's like not understanding historical context. And I think that, again, you really got to look in the mirror here, man, because the proof is in the pudding, John. We're not losing believers. We're losing church members because of this. The studies are very clear. Hypocrisy is killing Christianity. And, this holier than thou standard that is set, you can never live up to. It's anti-Christian if you think about it, man, because they want you to live up to this perfect standard when Christianity says you're not perfect. It doesn't make any sense. You're inevitably setting yourself up for failure. Dennis Hastert, for crying out loud, that's your party. That's your wing of the party, guys. I mean, my God, look at what he did. Look at what he was. You're inevitably going to fail to live up to your own standard, because after all, you're still just a man, flawed, fallible, so it bothers me, man, a lot, John. It bothers me.
Yeah, I hear you. And frankly, I chuckle just because I agree and actually appreciate your passion on the subject. Well, it sounds like Brother Deese understands the Bible about as well as he does history then, because look, slavery was ubiquitous throughout the world and throughout time. In fact, slavery is mentioned in the Bible, and it wasn't condemned or castigated as a practice. In fact, the Bible mentioned to slaves to be faithful to their rulers, their owners, and it mentioned to the rulers to be, just to their slaves. So, I mean, we're talking about this one country and this one point in time was all of a sudden supposed to break against the grain, and all of a sudden just of its own accord. And to your point as well, there were a number of founding fathers who understood that it was a moral issue that needed to be dealt with, and in fact tried to deal with it in the original Declaration of Independence, but for Georgia and South Carolina refusing to sign on. And they had to have a unanimous vote on the Declaration. So there was language that was going to condemn and outlaw slavery, but it was stripped from the final version of the Declaration that was passed. So, again, to put things into context, these were religious, well, not religious, they were deeply Christian people, deeply people of faith. I mean, again, I quote back from the Constitutional Convention when the Articles of Confederation were not working, they were not strong enough to hold the nation together. And they were going through and drafting the Constitution, and they were crafting it after the old Roman Republic, which is what they purposefully were trying to build in with the systems of checks and balances and putting, God-given rights at the very top of the pyramid. They understood, because they were so torn in the convention. And again, it was Benjamin Franklin who called out George Washington, probably the most pious man in that whole assembly, and said, if God knows when a bird falls from the sky, how can we hope to bring an empire up out of the ground without God's help? That we actually prayed to God every day when we were involved in this great conflict, and yet we've turned from our practice. And so those men adjourned, actually went to church together, and then prayed at the opening of every convention thereafter. And guess what? The Constitution was born, and our country has enjoyed divine providence ever since. And I'm sorry that the people didn't embody their perfect vision of what the country was going to be. To your point, we're all human beings. We're all flawed. And thankfully, Jesus did die on the cross for us so that he bore all condemnation away from us, so that we, our souls, our spirit, not our soul, our spirit was purified so that we could be vassals of the Holy Spirit. And these people, I just suggest that they go back and read the Bible, because they have such a flawed notion of it. It's not just that they're holier than thou, which is, again, hypocritical and reminds me so much of the Pharisees and Sadducees, but it's also that they peddle this soft form of Christianity. And that's not what people want. Where you look and you see the church flourishing is when it's dealing with persecution and when it's holding to the hard message, because there's a truth that's time immemorial. It doesn't change. God doesn't change. God's word doesn't change. What Jesus did for us didn't change. And so to have these churches to try and go along with the times and try and soft pedal the message, is it any wonder that places like in the Middle East or in China, where the church really faces persecution, that it's flourishing and growing and thriving, in places here where it's soft and it's being soft served to people, that it's waning right now. And that's a shame, because if this country has one true problem at this point in time, it's that we have a God-shaped hole in the soul of our country.
Big time. Big. And, I just want to bring up too, for the people who just really don't seem to get this, the founders, obviously, many of them would have wanted to do better, but they could not lose South Carolina and Georgia. So the idea is they moved and strove for a more perfect union, a better union. And to equate that with the abortion thing that's going on now, to me, John, is just crazy. Like, they want to be purists. And here's the problem. If you do that, good luck with the leftists who govern you in a one-party system. It's going to take some time, because you lost so much of that culture, just like the founders knew that they couldn't eradicate slavery right away. I think we'd all would love to end the need, or not need. There's no need. I'm personally, I'm way more pro-life than the consensus in the country. I don't know.
Right.
And I wasn't when I was young, but something happened to me when I looked at the ultrasound when my first son was not even being born, when my wife was
I know
pregnant.
exactly what you mean. I told my wife that was the moment that I was introduced to God.
It
when
was
I heard that
over.
heartbeat. Yep.
I mean, you can hear the heartbeat, John. You can see his little face. And it's like, in that moment, as someone who was raised in the liberal Northeast during the 80s and 90s, being told that it's nothing but a glob of cells until like
A fetus, right?
Yeah, the feet. I'm looking at it at 18 weeks, and I'm like, that's a baby. And something just happened to me that changed me. I know a police officer who's a product of rape, and he is a defender. I mean, by the way, in Texas. He's a defender, and thank God his mother kept him. He's just done so much good in the world. Even though, that was one of the most traumatic, probably the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to her. So I am myself as pro-life as it gets. I just also believe that life, maybe this is just part of my own experience in life that I've led, but life gets snuffed out way too easy. It's very quick. we're only here for a very short time. And I think it's the greatest gift aside from reason. Well, of course, reason is the greatest beside life, I would say, that God has given us, because reason and allows us to know we have a maker. But we were given this short period on this earth, and life is the greatest gift imaginable. I don't think we have the authority to tell him, the creator, that this life isn't good enough. We're going to just go ahead and exterminate this life before it even gets here. Now I think differently when it comes to capital punishment, though. I do think that we should tighten like what capital cases should basically be eligible for the death penalty.
Right.
For instance, there should be concrete, John. The Innocence Project found a lot of people who didn't commit those murders sitting on death row. So in this
Right.
day and age with DNA and everything, I do favor more stricter parameters to allow capital punishment. But I also recognize, like the founders recognized, needing Georgia and South Carolina, that you have to govern in order to change the world in the way you want to change it, or change the country and your society in the way you want to change it. And I don't even know what to say. The fake Christian right is very good at making people unelectable nationwide. And that's all they do. It's like, I don't like it, John, but it's reality, brother. You're not going
No,
to win Michigan being for, ban on all abortions. You're just not.
It's what I said. A principle is a principle only if you adhere to it and stick to it when it works against you. And I, like you, I'm 100% pro-life. In fact, it was a Kenneth Copeland Ministries prayer breakfast. It was on testimonial. And this one gentleman got up and he gave a testimonial. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye. He talked about getting, married very early. He was in the military. His wife had miscarriage after miscarriage, after, late into the pregnancies. And she was pregnant a third time. And there were complications. And they were actually trying to encourage him to go ahead and abort the fetus, because the unborn baby, because they said that, there's going to be brain damage. This child's never going to have a normal life. And then at that point in time, and I don't know if he was Catholic or not, but he said a priest came in and said, "Can I please do a baptism?" And actually laid hands. And when he laid hands on the womb, that the monitors and all the equipment went haywire. And he said, even then, the doctors were trying to encourage him, even though the signs of thriving, and all of a sudden the baby's starting to do well. And then the most powerful part of the presentation is, he goes, "And I want to introduce you to that child now." And his adult son was standing next to him, who was a grown man who had gone to college, was holding a great job, doing well in life. And, what more powerful testimonial can we have? But to your point, where again, a principle is a principle, I understand not everybody's there, and they have a voice and a say in this as well. And we have to lead by example and do it incrementally. I think most everybody agrees that it can't be abortion after birth, or it can't be a partial birth abortion, or a third term, and so what we have to do is start finding that common ground and start finding ways that we can win battles and chip away, which is what happened. Roe versus Wade didn't get overturned in one day and then all of a sudden, boom, abortion was illegal. No, now it's back to the states. And even in the states, they're having to kind of continue to wage this fight. But it also has to be a fight for the hearts and minds of people. We need to convince them why it is a moral decision. And the other thing I would say about the death penalty, and I'm like you, I'm a little bit squeamish about the death penalty, but the death penalty is advocated in the Bible. By the way, it's because it's a deterrent. And I, like you, if we could button it down, I mean, I think that there are things are certainly, you forfeited your right to life. You rape a child, you traffic a person, you murder somebody. I mean, I look at that point in time, as far as I'm concerned, you forfeited your right to be a productive member of society. And I don't know, what's more a deterrent, locking him up for life or actually going ahead and putting him to death. But that's one where I think I could be persuaded on versus, the whole abortion is.
I'll tell you, John, I'd love to see a bill like that, tightening up things, here and there. And I think, the way people around the country feel about it, I think that, again, it's one more way that we can start to persuade people that our core position is the right position. You can't do that overnight. It sucks about all of this. Robert K. Haley was hired to do it. I know he was from Trafalgar. I was hired to do in-depth studies about people's views on abortion, and nobody took any of our findings to heart. I mean, I can't speak for Robert, although I do know I think he came with 15 or 20 weeks, and they went beyond that. And both of us made recommendations to different clients at different times, but very similar time periods. You can find the consensus here, but I wouldn't even jump to that, even though we all know 15, 20 weeks, a pretty safe bet. What you should do is immediately just go after late term abortion and make Democrats take their mask off. Let them advocate and fight against a bill banning late term abortion. I dare them. But instead, Republicans like to kick themselves in the butt and the teeth, and they decide we're going to go for the Hail Mary pass right off the bat. And that's incredibly, incredibly stupid from a strategic position. I get it. But it's just you could have built a consensus, and they didn't do it. I got to play this because, speaking of polling, your opponent must have polled the district, because for folks out there, if you're an incumbent sitting on the appropriations committee, being the queen of the committee, and you have the power to bring home bacon to your constituents, get mega donor bucks. You don't even acknowledge when you have a primary challenger if you really don't think that challenger is a threat. The fact that Kay Granger's campaign has been flipping out lately, John, tells me they polled and they are scared of you. Here, I'm going to play a real quick clip. This happened at a meeting. I'll let you give people context about what it is. And I know I'm holding you for a while. I promise I'll wrap it up.
No, that's fine.
But I think this is funny stuff, because this is the sign of a scared incumbent. And let's put it on the screen anytime now. Okay, awesome. Sorry, sometimes there's a little glitch. All right, let's roll.
Given the evidence I provided regarding John O'Shea, I believe he has taken advantage of his current precinct chair position, along with the resources of this organization, for personal political gain, and should be made to resign from his position immediately.
So I know it's a little low. So this is the Granger campaign saying that they were demanding you resign as the head of the precinct because they think that, I know what it is. They think that your capacity allows you to be in touch with the base, John, and they don't want you to be in touch with the base. But they're wrong aren't they even wrong on the rules?
They're wrong 100% on the rule. What the rule states is that you can't be seeking office and then apply to be a precinct chair. Well, guess what? My term is up, and it'll be on the ballot in March when I'm actually running for Texas Congressional 12. So I have not made application to renew my precinct chair position. In fact, I hope to find somebody who's conservative who will work the district, the precinct for me. But yeah, talk about PR 101 mistake there. Frankly, I was flattered that they decided to bring attention to me. So that was at a resolutions committee meeting at the Republican Party headquarters. And that was her campaign chair, her campaign manager. She, unfortunately, apparently turns through quite a bit of staff. In fact, we heard from somebody that Kay has burned through 91 different schedulers in her 27 years. In fact, this gentleman said it's so bad that they don't even assign that email address a name anymore. It's just said scheduler number 12. Because every time they hired somebody in, they were only there so short term that they would have to renew it or redo the email address. But yeah, apparently I've struck a nerve, and frankly, I don't think it has anything to do with me. I think it has more to do with the fact that the voters understand that we are in a fight for this country's actual soul. Pardon me, spam call. And I think that they understand that if Kay has not been part of the solution, she has been actively part of the problem. She's part of the reason why we've gotten here. Like I say all the time, our founding fathers did not envision trading in a monarchy for a ruling class of professional politicians. And yet she's been in office now for 27 years. She's seeking to make it a full 3 decades. And candidly speaking, not only does Congressman Granger not represent my values, I don't believe she represents the voters in this district's values. And she certainly hasn't stood up and fought for this country in the way that she should. She's a part of the establishment. And back to our whole discussion at the very beginning about Ken, I think people here are looking for people who are unafraid, unapologetic and are willing to stand up and fight for them and fight for the things that they say are important to them. Kay Granger does not represent that. That's actually what I want to do, because I understand that servants need to make themselves last, that they need to be putting the thoughts and the interests of people ahead of theirs. And frankly, that's the only way I know how to run a campaign or how to run. Again, new experience for me. But I just see a group of politicians, by and large, who don't put themselves last. They put themselves at the head of the line.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And they just don't seem to care anymore about the consent of the governed. And I think
Right.
sadly there's a class of people that live off of them, the influencers, the consultants, the whatever, and the rest of them, the media, and they are, that's the great struggle of our time. And this really will end with whether or not that the consent of the government is a thing anymore. Voter sovereignty is where the power lies. I mean, for people who understood how Madison, thought about the separation of power, you being the voter who determines representation for so many of these offices, that is the last separation. If they take that away from you, then it's over. It all falls apart. I already
Right.
think that they did a lot of damage to it with the 17th Amendment, John, because they're supposed to be,
Agreed.
they're supposed to be diversifying how power is selected, and the state legislators closer to you, closer to me, were the ones who picked the senators. And not that you're taking it away from the voter, but the bottom line is you can't have every single position of authority be picked by the same entity in society or the same class in society. And if they take this away, it means that essentially the ruling class is picking everything. And I mean, I think Madison would have a heart attack if he saw it today.
Agreed.
Yeah, John, tell people, where to find you, where to support you, how to follow you, how to, get, see what you've been up to and come visit you and check you out, brother.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Rich. So you can find all my social media and everything about my campaign on my website, o'sheafortexas.com. That's O'Shea, the number 4, Texas.com. I've got my policy positions, I've got my interviews, I've got my op-eds that I've had published, and I have my events coming up. In fact, the first part of October, I've got Patriot Mobile sponsoring an event, and they're bringing in Cash Patel, and then we're having another fundraiser the next night with Cash. And so looking forward to that. Things are finally starting to ramp up, as everybody told me they would after Labor Day. And I'm starting to see it. And apparently Congressman Granger is seeing it too. And here's the funny thing about that, Rich, is it didn't just end there. And the whole thing that precipitated that was a fellow precinct chair had drafted a motion condemning Congressman Granger's voting history this last session. And so she was demanding that not only that motion not be heard by the House floor, but also demanding that person be punished, who actually had been an intern for the congressman's office when he was back in college at UTA. Interestingly enough, this guy, Carlos Tercios, give him a shout out, started the Turning Point USA chapter at University of Texas at Arlington. Great guy, nice, young, up-and-coming conservative voice in our party. But then that's when they turned it to that I should be forced to resign. She then later on, and I think we've put up the video that was shared to us, that she didn't actually defend any of the congressman's votes and said it was a violation of FEC rules if she were to try and speak about why the congressman voted the way she did. And these things are complicated. You don't need to know these things. But then that Thursday, those motions were going to be heard at the executive committee meeting where all the precinct chairs are. And her whole staff turned up there as well. I made a point of sitting behind them and talking with some of my friends for a period of time, thinking I might catch their attention, but they weren't interested in conversing with me for some reason.
Yeah, they got pulling back. I think it's somebody who's been doing this for a long time. That is what explains. You have, by the way, before I let you go, you have the support of Chris Putnam. He ran in 20, you almost beat her. You have the support of the primary challenger in 22. He barely spent anything, spent a couple thousand votes and still got double digits. That's the sentiment in that district, to get rid of her and get somebody else. And now, of course, huge victory for Ken Paxton, but also,
Yep.
John, I just got to say this. It's a huge victory for you too. You have Ken's endorsement. He's the hottest endorsement in Texas outside of Donald Trump. but it shows people, not you, because it shows people you're not a fair weather friend. You did that when Paxton was under assault. He could have been convicted, and that was an enormous risk, but you did it because it was the right thing to do, and you did it because he's your friend, and he in turn supported you because of it. I think it speaks the world about your character. That's
Well,
just not
thank
how
you.
politicians act these days, my friend. It's not.
No, well, but they need to. They need to remember who their friends are. Not look.
That's
If
right.
nothing else in my life, I've evidence that I'm loyal to a fault, and I'll never turn and walk away from somebody, especially when I know them to be in the right. And I don't care what the public condemnation might be. It's the right thing to do.
Well, come back and see us again, John. Love having you on as always. Thanks for giving us being so generous with your time as well. It was only supposed to be, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Here we are, 3:50.
Did we go
Thanks,
long?
brother. Come back and see us again. All right.
Okay. Always great talking to you, Rich. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
You too. All the
Right.
best. John O'Shea, ladies and gentlemen. What I really was getting at too is their like loyalty. He said it. That was risky to align himself with Ken. Ken gave him his support. That's called loyalty. All right. I want to bring this up because I have a clip from McCarthy I want to play, but this goes to with John's situation. I couldn't play the clip before. I'm just gonna run it. Let me just run it, and then we'll come back and talk about why I'm running it. This is Elisa Slider. She is the Republican National Hispanic Assembly chair. She's talking about. You're going to hear a lot more about this. I think you're going to be pissed off when you hear this. Okay, Republicans are here getting large shares of the non-white vote. The swings are real. They're not a mirage. And in a district like John's, that's incredibly important. When we polled that district, we could see Hispanics, first-time primary voters, wanting to participate in the Republican primary, wanting to come out. They're 85 or 80+%. I think it was 82 or 83% MAGA over traditional Republican. Far more than 4 out of 4 Republican primary voters. And instead of welcoming these voters into their arms, the Republican Party is willing to sacrifice the size of their tent in order to defeat people from America first. It's gross. Let's play it.
For some reason, there's this big move to remove organizations like ours, the Black Republican Caucus, Log Cabin Republicans, et cetera. They're moving us to no longer be a part of those committees. We're being told we are segregationists, and basically that they're trying to change the way things are run in those states when it comes to that. And so it's not just one state. Like I said, it's happening in a few states, and I don't want to name all the states quite yet, but I think we're going to have to start calling them out. I will call out one state for sure. That's the Kansas GOP, because they have already made some national news on what they are doing. So you can, look that up, but it's pretty frustrating at this moment. They're saying that we are segregationists, and that's not how they want to do things. They want to include everyone under one umbrella. And it sounds pretty and it sounds great, but that's not what's really happening. Outreach is necessary. And I'm sorry, the Republican Party has failed for many, many years on outreach when it comes to certain communities. And to get rid of organizations like ours, it's a slap in the face to that outreach. And I'm not on board with what they're doing. I'm not okay with what they're doing. And this needs to be called out, because enough is enough. And of course, we're seeing all of these, naysayers on these polls because they see that the numbers for Trump are getting better within the Black community, within the Hispanic community, and among younger Republicans. And I have a feeling that that's what it is. I'm sorry. Let me just be frank. I think it's because of support for Trump. It's an
effort against Trump.
An effort against Trump.
Okay, and Trump's wing of the party. All right, so here they are, post 2012, doing autopsies. We need a more Hispanic base. We need a more non-white base. I have said this countless times. I'm getting blue in the face, beating this dead horse. MAGA is younger. MAGA is more diverse. MAGA is more dynamic. And in order to stop America First, they're perfectly willing to cut off these people from being included in their party. Now, they claim it's under all one umbrella. They know that that's bull crap. For Texas Republicans who have reached out to Hispanics in South Texas for decades, they know that it takes specific outreach because of how bad Republicans have been at doing it. Same thing with Florida Republicans. They understand that it takes certain outreach groups. Miami Cubans for Trump. How do you think You think Miami went from 32, 33% Republican to 47% at the presidential level because what? They kept them all inclusive under one party banner? That's bullcrap. They were for Donald Trump. They branded them as specific, this part of our community for Trump. That's how the outreach is conducted. That's what's done. You need to attach your brand to their identity to first convince people that they belong in your movement. You cannot just do it generically like that. That's why Ronald Reagan, claiming that the economy is so good, and it was, didn't help him much with non-white voters. That's why this doesn't work. People have deep relationships with their communities. Democrats have been fostering these relationships for decades. So they know it's crap. They know what they're doing. They're full of it. It's disgusting. It should make you sick to your stomach. Last thing I want to play before I go is this. And I want to say this as clear as I possibly can. This is the least competitive primary for not only a Republican, a presidential nomination in modern memory. The leaders of the party don't want Trump. They're acting like this because they feel like they have no choice. Steve Daines, the head of the Republicans, effort to elect senators, National Republican Senatorial Committee, he's not in love with Donald Trump. He knows Donald Trump is in the historically strong position he's in. He's going to be the nominee. That's what he concluded. So instead of the nonsense, I'm going to work with him to get as many people elected as I can. Believe me, they don't want him. This guy has all his donors in California giving money or trying, they're backing out now, giving his money to DeSantis. So it's noteworthy when somebody like Speaker McCarthy says something like this.
All of that, the policies that you mentioned of the Biden administration is one reason that Donald Trump is leading in the polls right now. What's your take on this, that as we see more indictments of Donald Trump, he seems to be gaining in terms of popularity with the public? Will he be the nominee?
I think he will be the nominee. And the thing is, President Trump is stronger today than he was in 2016 or 2020. And there's a reason why. They saw the policies of what he was able to do with America, putting America first, making our economy stronger. We didn't have inflation. We didn't have these battles around the world. We didn't look weak around the world.
Well, it looks like Ron DeSantis is now trying to work with your colleagues who are pushing for a shutdown.
Yeah, but I don't think that would work anywhere. A shutdown would only give strength to the Democrats. It would give the power to Biden. It wouldn't pay our troops. It wouldn't pay our border agents. More people would be coming across. I actually want to achieve something. And this is where President Trump is so smart, that he was successful in this. President Trump is beating Biden right now in the polls.
Yeah, we have the poll. Let's show it.
He's stronger than he has ever been in this process. And look, I served with Ron DeSantis. He's not at the same level as President Trump by any shape or form. He would not have gotten elected without President Trump's endorsement. And so I believe our best step forward, pass our appropriation bills so we're stronger. Take the wokeism out, secure our border to make America stronger.
Oof. And he ends it with that brutal takedown. I did just want to show this before we go and get to a couple of these starred comments. This is why his what's it called? Why Trump's schedule is so smart. Here you can see where it's laid out. By the way, Dave, thanks for telling me that. I accidentally hit the volume switch and threw my volume down. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he knows where his strongholds are and he knows where he needs to go. This was the poll, obviously, we had done in Iowa. Not much has changed since a lot of people like Seltzer and others have conducted their own polls. So Dave Phelan showed how okay he was with losing by posting an absolutely butthurt response to Lieutenant Governor Patrick's long speech to his Twitter on Saturday. Crew Kid says, absolutely, Crew Kid. He had an absolute meltdown, and his statement was a disgrace. Dan Patrick said, listen, I'm not going to tolerate the politicization of the impeachment process like we had seen in this whole situation. And, that's good for him. I don't know why he didn't do more to stop it when he could, but it is what it is. All right, so there's Iowa. I do have to roll. Don't miss on Wednesday. There was a lot more I wanted to get into to talk to you with, but the public polling project, I keep getting a lot of people asking me about updates for that. I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, of course, we can always do better, but share it around. The link is in the description. The left side of the page, if you're looking on a desktop or laptop, is the national. The right side is the Peach State poll. So people are like, hey, where are we at on the Peach State poll? It's almost 20% funded. We're getting close, or not, but where it's not a bad haul so far. So share it far and wide. If everybody gave a buck, with the audience is so big, if everybody gave a buck, we would have more than enough that we would need to crowdfund for the month. All right. So why am I missing something? Is there on Wednesday I'm missing? Is there something that there's, I don't think so. Next week is the week that we are going to have maybe some disruptions to our show schedule because I have to go. Not have to. I got invited on Tim Pool. So next week I'll be on Tim Pool. So just stay tuned to how we're going to figure out how we're going to do this. All right. With that in mind, I'm going to kick rocks. All right. Don't forget, like and share. And I will see you Wednesday at noon. Wednesday and Fridays are noon Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss it, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. More polling trends on Wednesday. More about the get out the vote. It is not enough. I spent a lot of time talking to John. Got to get to that on Wednesday. That's what we'll do. Thanks for watching, folks.